2 weeks ago, a couple thousand people crowded into Albany's Palace Theater for a concert. This was more than just a musical event, though. It was a lifeline for all those coping with spinal cord injuries. The headliner was a Loudonville singer named Bruce Michael Keene. He has a 3-year-old niece with spina bifida and also has a business manager whose brother died from a spinal cord injury. So Keene celebrated the release of his first CD by turning over the proceeds of his Palace gig to Albany Med's Spinal Cord Injury Research Fund. And to make the night complete, the leading advocate for the spinal cord injured was the special guest on a big screen. When actor Christopher Reeve spoke to the crowd, you could hear a pin drop. He talked of the hope that their dollars would bring to thousands. As the concert's MC, I was given a rare opportunity to talk to Christopher Reeve at his home in Westchester County. Despite suffering from pneumonia, he wanted all of us to share his life and his dreams today. You will be seeing that interview today on Sunday morning.
And now, from Channel 6, WRGB, this is Sunday Morning with Liz Bishop.
Good morning. Christopher Reeve fell during a horse competition in Virginia 3 years ago. He was at the top of his game professionally and personally. He had become an American hero as Superman in the movies, had appeared on stage, had married, had a family. His life changed forever when his horse refused to jump and he fell on his head and severed his spinal cord. It was a very serious injury, so serious that he tells in his new autobiography that his mother wanted doctors to remove his life support. But he battled back, and today, 3 years later, he has become the leading advocate for the dollars for research that he believes could help him and others walk again. Last week, we visited with Reeve at his home in Westchester County, and today we share that interview with you.
Excuse me for croaking at you, but these are unfortunately part of the setbacks that happen. And what they don't tell you in rehab is that as time goes on, you have more and more to fight. Skin breakdown, loss of circulation, loss of bone density, all these things have to be dealt with. And of course, infections. The trach I have in my throat is, which enables me to breathe. The body doesn't want it to be there, so it fights it all the time. And that causes staph infections, which can lead to pneumonia. So it's just, you know, a litany of stuff that a spinal cord patient has to undergo.
Knowing what you know about spinal cord injuries, how would you characterize your progress?
My progress is good. I mean, it's not outstanding, but I have a very high level of injury. C2, I mean, it's right below the brain. And many people at that level, have very little recovery, but when you consider that when I was first injured, I could only move my jaw. And now I can expand my rib cage when I breathe on my own off the ventilator for exercise. And I can move the back of my shoulder blades. And I had sensation all the way down my spine, which I didn't have a year ago. Those are all very positive signs.
You're obviously a champion of this cause, but I wonder if you do that because you feel a responsibility to do that, or is it just a byproduct of your own determination?
It's really both. There are times when I wish I was totally anonymous and I could just hang out at home, but it's not a job I would have picked. I'm president of a club I wouldn't have wanted to join. But that happens sometimes and you have to deal with it. And for me to shirk that responsibility would be a great disservice to many people who are suffering.
Do you believe you will walk again, or do you hope you will walk again?
No, I believe I'll walk again, and what I'm trying to do is set a ticking clock to all of this. The government normally moves very slowly, but if a tornado rips through your county, disaster relief comes immediately. And what I'm trying to get people to understand is we should be thinking about this in terms of disaster relief. That there aren't people who are going to survive 5 years, or 7, or 10, or 15, or whatever. We have to allocate the money now. And the big breakthrough that has happened in spinal cord research is that they've identified the reason why the spinal cord does not regenerate. And they're working on antibodies that will create regeneration. And they've done it extremely successfully in rats and other small animals. And it won't be that difficult to translate that into humans. The biggest danger is toxicity or rejection by the immune system. But I believe those can be overcome, again, if there's enough money within the next couple of years, and then probably about 2 to 3 years of rehabilitation.
We'll have more with Christopher Reeve in just a minute. Welcome back. We continue our interview now with actor Christopher Reeve, paralyzed 3 years ago during a horse jumping competition. You have heard him say that his spinal cord injury is very severe, but that he's made progress. He tells us now that in some ways he thinks he's a lucky man. For one thing, he says he's still working. We continue our conversation now from his home in Westchester County. In a sense, you have this wonderful, creative, viable outlet in your career, able to direct, considering acting. What does your career mean to you now?
It's very important because I've been an actor for 27 years, and to have to give that up, see, many people, when they're injured, they lose their livelihood because there was only one thing they could do. But fortunately, the change from acting to directing is not that difficult to transition, and it's something I always wanted to do anyway, so I actually got to trade up, which was nice. And I've always enjoyed writing, but I wouldn't have had the self-discipline to write a book, except for being under these conditions. I always thought, you know, I might write my memoirs when I was 80, if anybody still cared. You know, but to be forced to put your life in perspective and make sense of it at 45 was a really worthwhile challenge. So I've not been constrained by this new identity as spokesperson for spinal cord research. I do that as a part of my life.
Do you feel that you are perhaps putting more pressure on yourself and those around you who are trying to help you, or that this is the way to achieve your goal of being able to walk again?
Unfortunately, the public often doesn't respond unless there's somebody who they know already that they can identify with. So when Rock Hudson died of AIDS, and then Elizabeth Taylor got involved, and Elizabeth Glaser died, that really you know, had a real impact on the public. What Betty Ford has done for alcohol and substance abuse, you know, is under the same category. So it's sort of fallen to me to be the one to speak up.
And I wonder what you could say to a youngster or to someone who all of a sudden randomly once again found himself in your situation tomorrow.
Oh, I see it all the time. You know, when I was in rehab, there next door to me was a 14-year-old kid who was playing around on the front lawn with his brother, and he got dropped straight on his head. And his injury is more severe than mine. He can't speak, and that's really that's a big loss. And I used to visit him a lot, and what I would say to anyone who's newly injured, or even those who've been injured for a long time and given up hope, is that help is on the way. New breakthroughs in spinal cord research are happening on a weekly basis. Human trials are possibly only a year or two away. Regeneration has been conquered, and they're not facing a life sentence. I truly believe we will beat this. Well, the scientists will beat this just as they beat AIDS, which was once thought to be, a virtual death sentence. But as Americans, when we pour money into a situation like going to the moon or have some kind of project in mind, when we put our hearts, our minds, and our money into it, we almost always achieve success. And that's going to happen in this case as well.
Our conversation with Christopher Reeve continues when we return. Christopher Reeve's recovery is agonizingly slow, pointing out how random and unpredictable injuries to the spine can be. To explain that better, consider the case of Troy's School 12 principal, James Kapp. He was injured in a fall from a fire escape at school, and at first no one was sure if he would walk again. But he is, and he shared his incredible progress with Jack Arneke, and we share it now with you.
Kapp hosted us in his home this morning for the first time since he suffered a severe lower spinal injury last Halloween. That's when the fire escape at School 12 gave way as he was standing on it. He fell over 20 feet, and the fire escape grate moments later fell on top of him. He knew he was in deep trouble. He had severe back pain. After being stabilized in the hospital for a couple of days, surgery. And surgeons installed a device to stabilize his injured back, a device that is brand new and a direct result of spinal cord research.
I can definitively say that I'm benefiting from that research because the metal device that was placed in my spine to stabilize the fracture was invented by Dr. Alan Carl, who was one of the orthopedic surgeons at Albany Medical Center Hospital, and was only developed within the last couple of years.
That device has provided his back with support and necessary internal strength that has allowed him to recover better than would have been possible just a couple of years ago.
Had that technology and research not occurred, they wouldn't have been able to do the type of surgery that they did on me, and my prognosis wouldn't have been as good.
Kapp told me that through the process he's experienced the most excruciating pain he's ever felt. He is past that now, not even taking a Tylenol. And his goal is to get back to being the full-time principal at School 12. And it's research and technology and attitude that he feels will get him there.
The fact that this research had been done and that this device was available, I really truly believe diminished the long-term, hindrances of the accident.
Kapp is planning on returning part-time in July, and by the time school opens in September, he's expecting to be a full-time principal again. That clearly shows what research and treatment can mean to a patient, a point Chris Reeve points out over and over again. You never know whom you're helping when you contribute to research. You were quoted in the paper just the other day as having some really high expectations for your future. Can you tell us about them and why you think they're realistic?
It all depends on money. It's all about money. Just like politics is about money, and movies are about money, and science and research are the same way. To give you an example, back in 1984, AIDS was considered a virtual death sentence. And the government spent no money on research. Today, because it's popular to support, there were the marches on Washington, there was the quilt. It became safe for politicians to support it. Today, we spend $1.3 billion a year. And that attracted all the top scientists. with the result that AIDS is really under control. So what it's going to take is more awareness on the part of the public and the realization that what goes into spinal cord research also benefits patients with MS, Alzheimer's, stroke, and Parkinson's. And that's a huge segment of the population. The life expectancy might get up into the 80s, but with that will come all these medical problems. Yeah. So it's not about saving me, it's about preparing for the future. It all goes together. I mean, like heart disease or cancer, but this is one situation where everything is so interconnected, that once people see that, then they'll realize it's about themselves. And people act out of self-interest. You know, like, gee, I'll kick in for research because it might delay my getting Alzheimer's. You know, and that's what I'm trying to do is not say save me, but, you know, look at what your own future might be.
Yeah.
People just got to see that it's not us the healthy versus those poor people. It's all of us. You could walk out of here this afternoon, fall down and break your neck. God forbid, but you're in the mix. You know, or you could have breast cancer next week. You know, and once people understand the interconnectedness, then they start to respond, and that's the message.
Christopher Reeve talks about life as a hero when we come back. We are talking today with actor turned activist Christopher Reeve about how he's coping after a spinal cord injury that has him locked to a wheelchair. He's written a book called Still Me. It's a sad play on words. And now he talks about why he doesn't think he's a hero and how he gets through his days. Do you think of yourself as a hero, and what is your definition of a hero today?
Well, it's an ordinary person without the resources that I have, who perseveres and endures against catastrophic conditions.
That would sound as if you're a hero.
No, because I have tremendous resources. I'm thinking about the families who can't call the president, you know, who have to sell their homes, put a young boy in a nursing home, give up their jobs. You know, it's they're the ones who are really fighting the greatest battle. They're the heroes.
You also say in your book that you live in the moment. What is that moment for you now?
Well, it's having dreams and aspirations, having goals, setting challenges, but also just taking every moment as it comes. Whether it's just a friend over for dinner, or making a speech before Congress, or suffering through a sleepless night. Whatever comes my way, just take it. And then try to transform it into something positive.
You call your book Still Me, but obviously you've changed.
Still Me has a double meaning. Still in the sense that I can't move, but still in the sense that I remain. As we all do, the essential definition of who we are is not governed by our bodies, but by our spirit. You know, by the heart and the mind. And fortunately, those are things that cannot be paralyzed.
Christopher Reeve's autobiography is entitled Still Me. It's available at local bookstores. We thank him very much for spending so much time and energy with us at his home in Westchester County. We'll certainly be following the progress of the spinal cord injury research that is going on now. We thank you for being with us as well. The CBS Sunday Morning program is next. We invite you to stay tuned, and we'll see you again next week.
Now, I want to give you guys some good news because I believe in results. Up until about a year ago, it was thought impossible to regenerate the nerves in the broken spinal cord. But in the rat models, 2 years ago, there were interventions and the rats sort of scrabbled around in their blue buckets, their hind legs kind of dragging behind them. You could hardly call it walking, but everybody was very excited because this was a first step, literally. And now, a year later, on a scale of 0, which means no movement, to 14, which means completely normal movement. Rats who have had a complete transection of the spinal cord are walking at a level of 12.5. And the average observer wouldn't even know there's something wrong with them. So the next step, and what we're working on now, is how to make this work in humans. There are protein molecules in the spinal cord which prevent regeneration. But antibodies are being developed which will knock out those proteins, allowing regeneration to occur, and with that, the recovery of function. Human trials may begin in as little as a year and a half, and if we have the same success in humans as we have in the rats, then 250,000 Americans will be able to say goodbye to their wheelchairs.